You know what the world really wants? It wants clarity, not confusion, not weakness, not people running around unsure of who they are or what they stand for. The world is tired of chaos. And do you know who provides clarity? We do. America provides clarity, and when we do, we don't whisper it. We declare it. We speak with authority, with courage, and with the kind of strength that comes from above, not just from within. That's why the world watches us. That's why they come. And I'll tell you right now, we're not apologizing for being who we are. We're welcoming the world to witness it. We're not here to prove anything. We've already proven it. We're not chasing approval. We are the standard. And when you are the standard, when you stand in divine alignment, you don't need to beg the world to like you. You open your doors from a position of strength, not desperation. You don't cry for acceptance. You command respect. Because when your house is in order, when your spirit is grounded, you can welcome the world without fear of losing yourself. People talk about tolerance, but let me tell you what we've got. Discernment. Tolerance without truth is surrender. But discernment, that's power. And America has it. We see clearly. We don't bend to every storm that passes through. We stand, and the world is drawn to that. They're drawn to it because it's rare. And rare things are valuable. We are valuable. But here's the key. Here's what most don't understand. You must be emotionally and spiritually detached to lead effectively. That doesn't mean you don't care. It means you're not controlled. It means you're not reacting to every little thing. That's weakness. That's distraction. Leaders, true leaders, operate from a higher place, and America must do the same. We're not shaken by criticism. We're not broken by disappointment. We're not begging for validation from countries that haven't built anything lasting. We built this. We carry the light. So we welcome the world, but we do it on our terms, not because we're arrogant, but because we are aligned with purpose, aligned with history, aligned with something higher. You cannot be everything to everyone and still be yourself. America knows who it is, and when you know who you are, you can welcome the world without fear. You don't conform, you transform. You don't chase approval. You command it by presence, by excellence, by legacy, and yes, by power. And let's not pretend power is a bad thing. Power used rightly lifts people. It doesn't destroy, it elevates. The greatest gift you can give the world is not your insecurity. It's your certainty. America is certain, not perfect, but purposeful, not flawless, but fearless. And from that place, we open the doors, not because we need to, but because we choose to. That's the difference between leadership and desperation. One commands the room, the other waits to be noticed. You don't welcome the world with open arms until you've first built walls of identity inside your soul. That's the paradox people miss. We didn't build a nation just with bridges. We built it with borders, and that's not hate. That's order, that's structure, that's wisdom. And when you have structure, then the bridges actually mean something. They lead somewhere. They take people higher. We're not just a country, we're an invitation, but not to chaos, to calling, to purpose, to possibility. We invite the world not to dilute us, but to witness us, to partner with greatness. And that takes spiritual detachment, because you cannot elevate others if you are entangled with their opinions. You cannot inspire if you're always trying to impress. You rise above so you can reach down and lift others up. So yes, we welcome the world, but let me make this clear. We welcome them from a position of power, not weakness, with confidence, not confusion, with clarity, not compromise, because that's what the world is really looking for. And that's what America provides, always has, always will. True strength is not loud. It doesn't need to be. It doesn't scream or cry out for attention. It stands firm, unshaken, and calm in the face of chaos. Emotional detachment is often misunderstood. People think it means apathy or coldness. That's wrong. Real emotional detachment is the mark of someone who has risen above the noise. It is the stillness of a leader who sees things clearly, not through the lens of reaction, but through the lens of wisdom. It is the discipline to remain anchored when everyone else is drifting. When you're emotionally detached, you don't allow other people's emotions to dictate your state. You're not moved by flattery, and you're not broken by insult. You listen, you observe, but you don't get pulled under. That is strength. It's not about shutting off your feelings. It's about refusing to be ruled by them. It's not about lacking compassion. It's about having control. You feel deeply, but you respond wisely. And that is what separates true leaders from those who are simply emotional performers. In a world where people are constantly triggered, constantly offended, constantly reacting, the person who stands back and sees the full picture becomes rare and powerful. The one who doesn't respond just because the crowd expects them to, the one who can wait, the one who can watch. That's not weakness. That's spiritual mastery. That's a person who has taken authority over themselves first and only then extends that authority outward. You can't lead others if you can't lead yourself, and you can't lead yourself if your emotions are your master. Strength doesn't show itself in how loudly you fight. It shows in how calmly you conquer, in how silently you endure, in how wisely you choose your moments. Emotional detachment is knowing the difference between what deserves your energy and what does. It's refusing to bleed for battles that don't matter. It's staying focused on your vision while the world tries to distract you. And make no mistake, the world will try. People will project their fear, their anger, their insecurity onto you. But when you've done the inner work, their projections don't stick. They slide right off because your identity isn't up for debate. To be emotionally detached is to know your value so clearly that nothing outside of you can shake it. Not praise, not criticism, not silence, not noise. You've built something stronger on the inside than anything that can be taken from you on the outside. That's what makes a person dangerous in the best way. That's what makes a nation great. When we operate from that place, not from emotional chaos, but from deep spiritual alignment, we become unshakable. And that's exactly what real strength looks like. America has never been about conquering by force. To say its power doesn't come from how many battles it can fight, but from how clearly it stands for something greater. This country was built not on domination, but on divine destiny. There is a difference. One seeks to control, the other seeks to call forth the best in others. Domination is about fear. Destiny is about faith. And America at its best operates not through fear, but through vision, through purpose, through a deep and undeniable sense that we were placed here for more than just survival. We were placed here to lead by example. You don't need to dominate when you know you've been chosen to demonstrate. Real influence doesn't come from crushing others. It comes from inspiring them, from revealing a higher standard and showing people what's possible when you refuse to compromise your calling. That's how America leads. Not by shoving its way into places, but by standing so strong, so free, and so aligned with truth that others are drawn toward the light. They don't feel oppressed. They feel awakened. They don't feel invaded. They feel invited. This is a nation founded on the boldness to believe in something invisible, something eternal. That kind of faith can't be conquered. And when a country holds on to that kind of belief, it becomes more than land. It becomes a symbol. It becomes a message. America is a message written in courage, in blood, in prayer, and in purpose. And the world doesn't follow a bully. They follow a beacon. They follow what shines, what resonates, what stirs the soul. Leading by divine destiny means America must stay grounded in the source of its strength, its spiritual foundation, because when you lose that, you lose your center. And when you lose your center, you start reaching for control. That's when nations fall. That's when movements collapse, because they stop being guided by vision and start being driven by insecurity. But when you stay aligned, when you know who called you, when you know what you were built to carry, you don't panic. You don't bully, you lead. To dominate is to depend on force, but to walk in destiny is to depend on favor. It means knowing that the hand of God is bigger than any human strategy. It means trusting that your position was ordained, not manipulated. And when you walk like that, you don't just lead people, you lift them. You don't crush resistance, you convert hearts. That's real power. And that's what America was meant to embody. The world doesn't need another empire. It needs a standard, a spiritual compass, a reminder that greatness doesn't scream, it speaks with authority. Leadership doesn't push, it pulls, it invites, it builds. America leads best when it remembers that its role isn't to dominate the world, but to demonstrate to the world what alignment with divine destiny looks like. And when we stay in that position, we don't have to force anything. The world follows because truth draws. And destiny speaks louder than domination ever could. Welcoming the world does not mean surrendering who we are. It doesn't mean watering down our identity to make others comfortable. It means standing so firmly in who we are that others finally get to see the real us, unfiltered, unshaken, undeniable. The act of opening our arms to the world is not weakness, it is a revelation. It is the confidence of a people who know exactly what they stand for, exactly what they value, and exactly what they will never compromise. When you're rooted in identity, you can extend invitation, not out of need, but out of strength. The mistake people make is thinking that by being open, you lose your edge. That's false. You lose your edge when you forget why you were chosen in the first place. You lose your edge when you start bending for every voice, every opinion, every ideology that knocks at your door. But when your core is solid, when your values are not for sale, then welcoming the world becomes a statement of confidence, not confusion. It becomes an opportunity to display who you really are without apology, without fear, and without dilution. We were not called to mimic. We were not called to blend in. We were called to stand out. America was never meant to be a chameleon that changes colors based on who's watching. It was meant to be a city on a hill, unhidden, unmoved, unmistakable. That's the power of identity. That's the power of clarity. When a nation knows who it is, it can welcome anyone without becoming everyone. It can embrace diversity without sacrificing direction. To welcome the world is not to dissolve into it. It is to influence it. It is to say, here's who we are, here's what we believe, here's what we protect, and here's what we offer. It's an act of authority, not submission. It's a demonstration of truth, not tolerance without substance. The strength to welcome comes from a place of fullness, a place where nothing needs to be borrowed because nothing is lacking. And the truth is, the world isn't coming here to see a mirror. They're coming to see something different. Something real, something bold. If we try to become like everyone else in order to be liked by everyone else, we lose the very thing that made us valuable. The power of a nation, like the power of a person, is rooted in authenticity. It is the refusal to pretend. And when we stand in authenticity, the right people are drawn, the right alliances are formed, and the right future is built. So let them come. Let them see. Let them experience. But let it be the real America they meet, not a version that's been softened by insecurity or reshaped by fear. Let it be the America that knows itself, that honors its roots, that keeps its promise. Because when the world sees us clearly, it doesn't diminish us, it confirms us. And when we reveal who we truly are, we don't lose our soul, we fulfill our purpose. Before there is ever freedom in the land, there must be freedom in the soul. You can build all the institutions you want, pass every law, raise every flag, but if the spirit of the people is in bondage, none of it means anything. True liberty doesn't begin on paper, it begins in the heart. That's why America is more than a country, it is a spiritual force. A place where freedom is not just a right, but a revelation. Because what we offer to the world is not only geographical space or political refuge. We offer the idea that a person's destiny does not need permission. That freedom is not given by man, it's recognized by man because it comes from God. This is what separates real liberty from imitation. There are nations that mimic freedom. They imitate the look of it, the language of it, the sound of it. But deep down, fear rules, control rules. The soul is still in chains. They may speak of rights, but those rights are fragile, temporary, or conditional. Not here, not in America, because this nation was founded by people who understood that if your soul is free, you can build anything. You can survive anything. You can create systems, lead revolutions, and change history. But if your soul is enslaved by fear, by doubt, by lies, then even in the most advanced society, you will still feel like a prisoner. That's why America matters. Not because it's perfect, but because its foundation is spiritual. Its blueprint was written not just by politicians, but by visionaries, men and women who saw past their moment and understood that God doesn't build nations the way man does. He doesn't start with money or armies or land. He starts with conviction. He starts with people who are willing to live free on the inside before they ever experience freedom on the outside. So when we welcome the world, we are not simply offering them a new address. We are offering them a new mindset, a new spiritual inheritance a new atmosphere where they are no longer bound by what they came from. They are now part of something built on truth, built on the belief that every human being carries a spark of divine purpose that no government can take and no tyrant can erase. This is why spiritual freedom must come first, because if it doesn't, the external systems will eventually collapse. The heart must be free. The mind must be awakened. The soul must be untied. That is what makes liberty last. That is what gives power to the Constitution, to the flag, to the laws. Without the spirit of freedom, these are just symbols. But with it, they become sacred. They become living reminders of what is possible when people align, not just with each other, but with heaven. America's gift to the world is not just opportunity. It is identity. It is the space to rediscover who you are without chains. That is freedom. That is power. And that is the light we carry. Confidence doesn't scream. It doesn't need to. Real confidence is quiet because it's secure. When a person or a nation knows who they are, they don't react to every threat, every comment, every challenge. They operate from a position of stillness and strategy, not noise and fear. That's what true power looks like. And that's what allows a nation like America to open its gates, not out of pressure, but out of power. Because when your house is in order, you don't fear who walks through the door. You set the tone for what happens inside it. Weakness builds walls from fear. Strength builds boundaries from wisdom. There's a difference. Fear pushes people away because it's uncertain of its own value. Power, on the other hand, welcomes, but it welcomes from a position of clarity. It welcomes with terms. It welcomes with standards. And more importantly, it welcomes without losing itself. That's the kind of presence America must continue to carry. We don't open our doors because we're unsure of who we are. We open them because we are absolutely certain. A nation that opens itself without identity is setting itself up for confusion, but a nation that knows who it is, what it stands for, and who it answers to can invite others in and remain unchanged at its core. That's not arrogance, that's alignment. It takes inner strength to engage with the world without being absorbed by it. It takes spiritual maturity to influence without being influenced, to welcome without becoming dependent, to extend your hand without lowering your crown. This is why confidence is everything. You can't fake it. You can't buy it. It's something that must be built, refined, and rooted in something higher than applause or agreement, because applause fades, agreement shifts, but truth stands. And when a nation stands in truth, it becomes immovable. It becomes a foundation that others can build on, not a wave that tosses people around. When your confidence is built on principle and not popularity, then you can lead. Then you can welcome others in without fear of being overtaken. We don't need to become smaller to make space for others. That's a lie. True greatness isn't threatened by growth. It multiplies. When you're confident, you can allow people to bring their story, their gifts, their voice without compromising your own. You're not intimidated by different. You're not threatened by new, because you're not looking to be defined. You're looking to lead. And leadership welcomes the world without sacrificing what made it worth coming to in the first place. So yes, we open the gates, but we do it with discernment, with strength, with confidence that comes from knowing we've built something worth protecting, worth sharing, and worth multiplying. When you're rooted in power, you don't fear influence. You become the influence. You become the standard others adjust to. And that's what America was designed to be: a light, not just a location; a power, not just a place; a nation so sure of its foundation that it can open its gates without ever losing its soul. The moment you become a servant to people's opinions is the moment you forfeit your authority. You cannot serve the world if you are constantly seeking its approval. Leadership, whether in a person or in a nation, demands a higher posture, one of strength and not desperation. You rise by purpose, not popularity. You impact by vision, not validation. The world doesn't need more performers trying to impress it. It needs pioneers willing to stand alone if necessary, willing to be misunderstood in the short term in order to move history in the long term. America's greatness was never built on public applause. It was built on the courage to do what was right, even when it wasn't easy, even when it wasn't popular. That's the foundation. That's what separates authentic power from shallow influence. You can't lift the world when you're chained to its approval. You can't lead nations when your decisions are being made from fear of criticism. Because when you're looking for applause, you'll say whatever they want to hear. But when you're grounded in purpose, you say what needs to be said, you do what needs to be done, and you become what others can depend on. There's a difference between connection and compromise. You can connect with the world, you can understand, relate, empathize, but the moment you compromise who you are to stay in their favor, you've lost your assignment. You've traded destiny for comfort, and comfort never produces change. Comfort keeps you small, quiet, safe, but purpose calls you to rise, to challenge, to shake things up, to awaken people who have fallen asleep to truth. The world is not looking for someone to copy it. It's looking for someone to confront it, not with arrogance, but with conviction, not to condemn, but to call higher. That's what America is meant to do, to call people higher, to embody a standard that doesn't shift with every new trend, every global pressure, or every emotional wave. That takes strength, that takes vision, and above all, that takes spiritual detachment from the noise of the crowd. When you're detached, you're not dismissive, you're decisive. You're not cold. You're clear, you know what's true, and you're not shaken by opinions that come and go. Because opinions are when truth is a rock, and a nation built on truth can carry others, guide others, serve others, but only if it's not constantly bending to be liked by others. America was designed to be the kind of leader that doesn't follow the world, but walks ahead of it. That doesn't ask, what should we become, but declares, this is who we are. That clarity is what gives us the power to serve with strength, to help without losing our head, to uplift without stepping off the foundation. You can't carry the world if you're still waiting for it to clap for you. So stop performing, start standing, stop reacting, start ruling, because the world is not changed by those who blend in. It's changed by those who rise up, and rise is exactly what we must do. When you truly know who you are, you don't fear who anyone else is. That's the unshakable confidence that separates leaders from followers, strength from insecurity, and purpose from confusion. Identity is power. It is a foundation of influence, the root of resilience. When your identity is firm, you're not threatened by someone else's presence, achievements, culture, voice, or differences. You can engage, collaborate, and welcome others, not from a place of defense, but from a place of deep-rooted clarity. That's what maturity looks like. That's what greatness looks like. That's what real leadership requires. Too many nations and too many people live in reaction, always adjusting, always adapting, always reshaping themselves to avoid offense, to avoid rejection, to avoid conflict. But when you live like that, you're not living from truth, you're living from fear. And fear is a terrible foundation. It produces anxiety, indecisiveness, and weakness. That's not leadership, that's survival. And this nation was not built to survive, it was built to lead. It was not built to imitate, it was built to stand out. When you know who you are, it doesn't matter how different the world around you becomes. It doesn't matter who walks into the room. You don't shrink, you don't hide, and you don't overcompensate. You stay grounded because your identity is not a performance, it's a promise. And when that promise comes from something higher than culture, higher than government, higher than human approval, then your foundation is unshakable. That's where peace comes from. That's where strength comes from. That's where influence flows from. There's a reason people are drawn to certainty, not arrogance, not dominance, certainty. Because in a world of confusion, people crave direction. They want to know that someone knows what they're doing. And when you live from identity, true identity, you become a compass for others. You don't have to push to be followed. You don't have to scream to be heard. You simply become a living standard, a point of reference, a source of stability in a culture that is constantly shifting. This is why America must never abandon its core. We don't need to apologize for knowing who we are. We don't need to retreat to appease those who don't understand us. We're not here to be defined by outside voices. We are here to demonstrate something great, and we can do it boldly, humbly, and unapologetically, because knowing who you are is not pride, it's purpose. When you operate from identity, you can honor differences without fearing them. You can listen without losing your voice. You can share space without surrendering your strength. That's how nations grow. That's how unity is built. not by erasing identities, but by anchoring them. We welcome others not by becoming less of ourselves, but by becoming more of ourselves. We don't react to the world. We reveal truth to it. And truth, when it is clear and consistent, transforms everything it touches. That's why identity matters. That's why we must protect it. And that's why when we know who we are, we don't fear anyone else. We lead. America is not just a piece of land with borders and buildings. It is an altar of destiny. It is a place where ideas are born, where courage is tested, where vision is refined. It is not just a nation. It is a calling, a spiritual territory designed for more than economics and politics. From the beginning, America has stood as a stage for global transformation, not because we were perfect, but because we were willing to believe that purpose could shape a people and that people could shape the world. That's not a small idea. That's a divine assignment. What makes America unique isn't just what it has, it's what it represents. It represents a place where human dignity meets divine opportunity, where liberty is not a slogan, but a spiritual atmosphere, where the broken come to be rebuilt, where the silence come to speak, where the dreamers come to build. That kind of place is rare, and it doesn't happen by accident. It happens when a people recognize that they are not just existing, they are stewarding something eternal. This is why we must treat America as more than a system. Systems are human-made, but a stage for destiny that's heaven ordained. And when you are entrusted with something sacred, you protect it differently. You build with conviction. You speak with purpose. You lead with reverence. You don't follow trends. You follow truth. You don't chase validation. You uphold vision, because this place isn't just a destination, it's a demonstration. The world doesn't just look at our government or our economy. They look at our soul. They look at the fire that built this country, the faith that sustained it, the boldness that defined it. And whether they agree or not, they are watching, because this nation carries weight. It carries meaning. It carries the responsibility of being a global reference point for freedom, for courage, for alignment with purpose. And if we ever forget that, we don't just lose influence, we betray the very reason we were formed. We are not here to blend in with the rest of the world. We are here to set the tone, not in arrogance, but in assignment. Because when you understand that your nation is an altar, you don't treat it casually. You don't entertain confusion. You don't trade purpose for comfort. You rise to the level of the call. You live with clarity. You govern with conviction. You welcome the world not because you need affirmation, but because you carry something worth sharing. And that's the truth. We carry something. We carry freedom that's not just written in law, but carved into spirit. We carry vision that doesn't bow to pressure, but leads through storms. We carry legacy not built on dominance, but on divine alignment. This is not just America, the country. This is America, the assignment. And the world is watching, not to see if we'll succeed, but to see if we remember who we are. Because when we do, the stage becomes more than a place. It becomes a movement, a light, a force, a revelation. Emotional detachment is one of the highest forms of strength, not because it makes you feel less, but because it empowers you to rise above. It's not rejection, it's elevation. It's the conscious decision to step out of the chaos so you can see clearly, think clearly, and act with wisdom in a world where emotions dominate conversations, decisions, even entire movements. The one who learns how to separate their soul from the storm becomes the one who leads it. Detachment doesn't mean disconnection. It means discernment. It means you know when to engage and when to rise above. Too many people confuse emotional involvement with effectiveness. They think that reacting means caring. But the truth is, overreaction is a form of weakness. When you're ruled by your emotions, you're easily manipulated, easily provoked, easily swayed. That's not strength, that's instability. Real strength is the ability to feel fully and still remain unmoved by temporary noise. It's being anchored in truth so deeply that no matter what someone says, no matter what happens around you, your peace stays intact, your clarity stays sharp, and your vision stays alive. When you rise above, you're not abandoning the people. You're leading them. You're giving them a model of what freedom looks like. Freedom from offense, freedom from fear, freedom from the emotional bondage that keeps so many stuck in cycles of conflict and confusion. That's what leadership looks like. Not someone who joins the panic, but someone who calms it. Not someone who mirrors the storm, but someone who commands peace within it. That's why the great leaders, the real transformers of history, all had this trait. They could rise above, they could detach, not because they were cold, but because they were focused, because they understood their mission was too great to be interrupted by every insult, every emotional plea, every distraction disguised as urgency. They didn't harden their hearts. They disciplined them. They didn't stop feeling. They learned how to feel deeply without drowning. When you can rise like that, you gain power. You become the person in the room that everyone turns to when everything else is shaking. You become the steady voice, the quiet presence, the grounded authority. Not because you're disconnected, but because you've mastered connection without dependence. You can love people without being pulled into their chaos. You can hear noise without absorbing it. You can face fire without burning. This is what America needs, and this is what it must model. A nation that doesn't panic. A people who don't scream with the crowd, a leadership that doesn't bow to emotional manipulation. We must be the standard. We must be the ones who rise, not because we are better, but because we are aligned with something higher, because we have work to do. We have a world to guide, and that world will not be led by those who can't rise above their own reactions. It will be led by those who've learned to elevate, to govern themselves, and then extend that power outward with clarity, compassion, and unstoppable purpose. Before a nation can welcome the world, it must first master itself. That mastery is not rooted in military might or economic dominance. It begins internally in the soul of the people. It begins with clarity, conviction, and the willingness to stand firm in purpose regardless of who is watching. If a country does not know who it is, it becomes a mirror to whoever stands in front of it. But if it is grounded in identity, it becomes a lighthouse, unchanging, steady, and guiding. Mastery is what allows a people to extend their hand without lowering their standard. You cannot lead if you are still trying to discover who you are. You cannot offer stability to the world if you are constantly swayed. There must be a foundation, and that foundation is built in private before it is demonstrated in public. That's the principle. The strength to welcome others comes not from insecurity, not from appeasement, but from the kind of spiritual clarity that makes you unshakable in the face of, you know what you believe, and that belief informs your actions, your policies, your vision. When you have not mastered yourself, every new influence becomes a potential threat. You feel the need to bend, to prove, to explain, to defend. But when you are anchored in truth, you welcome others with calm confidence. You set the atmosphere. You control the tone. You lead from the front, not from fear. That's the posture of purpose. That's what America was designed to embody, not just a place of refuge, but a place of revelation, a place where the world doesn't just find safety, they find direction. But you can't offer that kind of direction if you're still searching for it yourself. That's why mastery must come first. The discipline to govern your spirit, to steward your values, to protect your identity. It's not restrictive, it's powerful. It allows you to discern who and what aligns with your vision. It prevents you from compromising under pressure. It creates the space for others to thrive under the safety of order, not chaos. And order is not about control, it's about alignment. When a nation is in alignment with its higher calling, everything it does flows from that source. It builds without confusion. It welcomes without fear. It multiplies without losing essence. That's the power of inner mastery. It creates a ripple effect. Strong individuals form strong communities create strong cultures, and strong cultures form a nation that doesn't just survive in the world, it leads. So the work starts within. Before we open our gates, we build our foundation. Before we invite others to walk with us, we must know where we're going. This is not about isolation, it's about preparation. When the inner work is done, the external influence becomes natural. Welcoming the world becomes not an obligation, but a calling. And those who enter don't bring confusion, they step into clarity. Not because they change us, but because we've already decided who we are. That is the posture of mastery. That is the position from which nations rise and destinies are fulfilled. So now the world is watching to see not just what we will say, but who we will be. Will we rise with conviction or collapse under compromise? Will we lead with strength or retreat into silence? The answer doesn't lie in the noise of the crowd or the pressure of the moment. It lies in our foundation. And that foundation is solid. It is spiritual. It is eternal. We were not built to follow trends. We were not called to imitate. We were chosen to set the standard, to lift the bar, to be the light that doesn't flicker when the winds rise. We welcome the world not because we need them to define us, but because we know who we are. We invite not to impress, but to lead. We open our doors from a place of purpose, not passivity. And when we do, we don't lose our soul. We reveal it. We reveal the strength that doesn't shout, the confidence that doesn't bend, and the vision that doesn't fade. This is the moment to remember our divine assignment, to walk in wisdom, to rise in clarity, and to lead not just as a country, but as a calling. Because when America stands in truth, the world doesn't just notice it, they follow it. And when we stand in identity and destiny and spiritual authority, the gates don't just open, they transform everything that walks through them. We are not here to blend in, we are here to bless. And that blessing begins with boldness. Let the world come, but let it come to a nation that is unshaken, undivided, and unafraid. Let it come to a people who know exactly who they are and exactly why they were chosen. That is America. That is our mission. And that is the legacy we will defend, protect, and fulfill.